Hi, I'm Shan Wu, and I'm here to declare that the Signalgate scandal is over. Well, not exactly. That's only if you believe the White House secretary. So here is our undercover of law analysis of why Signalgate should not ever be over until we have some accountability. First, let's listen to what the White House has to say about it.
This case has been closed here at the White House as far as we are concerned. There have been steps made to ensure that something like that can obviously never happen again.
So obviously they feel that you can just declare the case is closed. And she's talking about steps were taken to make sure it doesn't happen again. Like, what steps would that be? Well, it does kind of sort of sound like she's acknowledging something was wrong, like you might have to take steps to make sure it doesn't happen again. So let's review a couple of things that weren't right about holding a public planning session about attack plans with top defense officials on a chat platform not secured, with one of the participants signing in from Moscow. Oh, and including a reporter accidentally on the chat. So we have some transcripts now, and although these have been widely publicized, it's worth the moment to drill down a little bit into a couple of these specifics, because we all know generally what happened, which was that this was released about the fact that the reporter was involved. But there hasn't been quite as much drill down because there's a lot of spin from the Trump White House about how these weren't war plans and everything was fine, right? So let's take a look at exactly why this debate over whether it was classified or not is kind of nonsense. So let's take a look at this one excerpt here. So this is Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, chatting. And he's talking about the time the weather is favorable. The time stands at 11:44 Eastern time. Just confirmed, we're go for the mission launch. And then look at what he talks about. He talks about exactly the F-18s are going to launch, the drone strikes are going to launch, and then they talk about the strike drones are on target, and the F-18 second strikes have started, and sea-based Tomahawks have been launched. And then, of course, the terribly ironic thing here is Hegseth says we're currently clean on OPSEC, right? Like, that's Operation Security. Like, we're clean except for the fact that we're on Signal and we have a reporter on it. Now, an interesting point here is something the Trump administration likes to do is to have big fights about what's classified, right? Remember back with the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. But it doesn't have to be classified to, one, be illegal in terms of the breach. It merely needs to relate to national defense information. This obviously relates to national defense information. Number two, whether it's classified or not doesn't mean there's a massive danger to armed forces and the national security by having this on a non-secure type of signaling information, signal chat. So if you take a look at some analysis that the BBC reported with a former British Army military intelligence person, Philip Ingram, he said, quote, "This falls firmly into the bracket of what would have been classified top secret." He says you can practically plot where the aircraft are going to come from. That would be an example of why it's pointless that Hegseth keeps saying this was not a war plan. This is not a war plan, like he just wants to play semantics with it. Now, I'm going to put up some timeline graphics to illustrate something here, because while they're having this talk, this is real time, like literally planes, missiles are in the air. So you take a look at the National Security Advisor, Waltz, what he says at 13:48. He says, the building has collapsed, there's multiple positive IDs, amazing job. Vice President Vance seems confused about the reference. Waltz writes, this is great. Typing too fast, right? How many of us, when we're doing text chats, say, oh, typo, big thumbs. That's what Waltz is saying, typing too fast. He wants to clarify. The first target was their top missile guy. We had positive ID of him walking into his girlfriend's building, and it's now collapsed. Let's just pause for a second there. Hegseth also brags how no sources were compromised, nothing about national security was compromised. Anybody looking at this is going to say, wow, how did they know that this person who was killed in the strike was walking into his girlfriend's building, right? And you've heard some reporting about this, but people understand national security and, frankly, espionage will say, look, anyone looking at this is going to say, what was the leak here, right? Had they compromised his electronics, the girlfriend's electronics? Was the girlfriend or someone in her family, a circle of friends, cooperating in this? This is obviously revealing sources, because otherwise you're not going to know that it's his girlfriend's apartment, right? So then we go back to the timeline. They're all congratulating each other, and you have this comment about Hegseth is talking about, this is a great job, everybody, and they're all complimenting each other, kudos and such. And one thing that you're going to notice here is, we want to emphasize this, Tulsi Gabbard kind of appears here in the chat, and her comment is really disturbing. She's like, great work and effects, you know, as though she's watching some movie and she's applauding its special effects. Again, this is just not the kind of professionalism that you want in people planning these life and death strikes. People are being killed in these strikes, and the safety of us, the safety of armed forces people are on the line, and they're talking like they're playing a video game or watching a movie. Now, a really important point about why Signalgate must not be declared over is, who is really in charge of the government? All right, remember all the criticism being rained on Biden, saying, oh, maybe it's not sharp enough, other people are running it. Let's take a look at the transcript here of this major military strike being planned and ask ourselves, who's really running the government? So take a look at this excerpt from March 13th. This was before the strikes. And they're talking about, how we're going to plan, how we're going to coordinate. And Waltz says that his deputy is pulling together a tiger team from the different groups, following up, this is a quote, from the meeting in the sit room this morning for action items. Please provide your best staff for point of contact. So notice, the planning meetings is in the situation room, right? Highly secured, it's a SCIF facility, but now he's moved it to the Signal chat platform, right? Okay. Now let's drill down a little bit further. Who's actually giving the green light to go on the operation? So we'll take a look at the transcript here, and there's some debate about, what to do, and there's some back and forth. This is kind of where Vance had also come up some questions on Vance's part of whether this is the best time to do it. But what you actually find here is, where is the military presence, right? Where is like somebody high-ranking, such as the Joint Chiefs of Staff head? These are all non-military people sitting in there. I mean, some of them have military background, we'll talk about that, but who's missing in this picture, right? And for good measure, Trump also fired the Chief of Naval Operations and the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force. So who's running the operation? We have an infantry officer in the National Guard running the U.S. military, that's Hegseth. And yeah, he got medals for his service. No one's debating that, right? And Waltz is the guy who served in defense policy roles. His military experience consists of being a Green Beret. Again, he got medals. And he is in charge of this operation. But is he? Who's really giving the final green light? Who's doing the commander-in-chief kind of go-ahead? It's the guy with zero military experience. Stephen Miller gives the green light. Take a look. And he gives the green light. He's the one that's talking about, as he hears it, POTUS, Trump says, is a green light for it. All right, so that's very, very troubling. We really need to focus in on that question as to who's really running the government. And of course, you have Trump later talking about the Signalgate scandal, saying he didn't know anything about it. Okay, so maybe he didn't know that they were chatting on Signal, or is he really saying he doesn't even know about the strikes? Like he's not in charge of anything here, right? That's a question the media needs to be asking. Right now, the perfect continuation of this saga is that the reporting is now that this was hardly Waltz's first rodeo with this issue. I mean, take a look at the Daily Beast headline. And I like their headline because it reminds me of President Nixon's quote about Watergate and who to blame, which I just have to play again because I like it so much.
Well, who is the asshole that did that?
The Wall Street Journal kind of broke some of this follow-up. They were talking about how there was a debate over whether Trump was going to fire Waltz, but really critically, they quote two top U.S. officials as saying that Waltz has created and hosted multiple other sensitive national security conversations on Signal with cabinet members including threads on how to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine, as well as military operations. They declined to address if any classified information was posted in those chats. So, problem with Waltz, obviously, but what is up with these cabinet officials that they act this way? I mean, where's their staff? Where's their common sense on this point? However, despite that, the White House is expressing complete confidence in Waltz. Take a listen.
And we're moving forward, and the president and Mike Waltz and his entire national security team have been working together very well. If you look at how much safer the United States of America is because of the leadership of this team.
Nevertheless, the Wall Street Journal, as we were talking about, was reporting that Trump was pissed off. And maybe he didn't want to again lose his national security advisor in the first weeks of his administration, the way he lost Mike Flynn. You remember that, right? So Trump should be worried, yeah, but he's worried about the wrong thing. Because as the Wall Street Journal reports, what he's really pissed off about is the fact that Waltz had a reporter's number on his phone, right? Because he doesn't really care about having all these things compromised or the danger of the danger posed to U.S. military forces. What he's caring about is this guy is talking to a reporter, maybe, who I don't like that reporter. As always, it's image over substance. That's what Trump really cares about. But, you know, we can put him down for that, but that becomes really, really dangerous if you're running the country that way. You're putting your armed forces and us at risk. Then the substance really matters. It's not just the image. That's why Signalgate isn't going away, why it mustn't go away, and why we have to keep pushing for the Democrats to look into this, to make people answer questions under oath. So that's it for now. Thanks again for replies and comments. Keep them coming, and we'll keep an eye on this as well as the other things as well.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.